Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading property experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, and Ben Kingsley, Chair of Property Investment Professionals of Australia, and the 2014 and 2015 Property Investment Advisor of the Year.
Alright folks, you're on the Property Couch, where each week Ben and I bring you the insider's guide to property investing. But this week, Ben, we bring you the insider's guide to back surgery.
We do.
Mate.
We're currently in my little house.
Mate, Ivis and I were driving over to your place this morning, just reminiscing about, what episode was it, Ivis? Sort of 3 or 4 or 5 or something? Where you're upstairs on your back, and I'm thinking, wow, this podcast has reached new heights now. We go into our new studio in North Melbourne, and then now we're back here, mate.
So we're back. We're back to the future.
I think it's an inspiring backdrop here, though, because we've got Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah.
We've got 2 Hulks, not 1.
That's it. Paint the picture in the boys' playroom in the house. Yep. Actually, there's a little cash register.
Oh, mate, with United States money, I see.
We've got it all here, teaching the boys how to manage money early.
It's all happening. But how is the back?
So operation was last Wednesday. We're okay. We were pretty good early, but now we're there's a few little things we're playing around with it, so we'll just have to wait and see. But so it's a revision of the old microdiscectomy, and they put a little spacer in there so I don't get the sciatic pain down my left side. So
the leg pain's gone, but the back pain still exists.
Oh, look, there's a 10 centimetre incision in my back. That's the problematic at the moment, but I'm positive. Glass half full.
Mate, you'd feel like a pincushion, wouldn't you?
At this stage I do, but we're all good.
No, Ben's very humble, isn't he? Ives just wants to move on. Doesn't want to chat about the back stuff.
No need the back stuff. No need the back stuff.
And
but
we'll see how the effects of the sorry, this is Buzz Lightyear.
This is Buzz Lightyear. I just thought I'd bring him into the conversation. Oh, beautiful. Fantastic.
Well, everyone was hoping for infinity and beyond.
Oh, no. Sorry.
So were you.
Oh, there you go. I've knocked
As everything falls
So
down
what are we talking
us.
about today, mate?
Mate, well, we're going to talk about, if anyone hasn't seen behind the scenes of 100th episode last week,
right.
It's on Facebook.
Is it?
So go and check that out.
Did I sign off on that?
Mate, well, you're on your back, mate, so you probably went around signing executive orders.
Okay, all right, there we go.
So check that out on Facebook, but we had a bit of fun last week. I don't think there's too many major takeaways that our listeners hadn't heard already.
Wait, but are you telling me that our level of authority is going to increase from the video or actually drop?
Well, I just think that shows we're human. We're having a good time as well. But mate, we're going to do a couple of things today.
Sure.
One is we retired your sign-off last week.
We did.
But because it was so esteemed in the community,
yeah,
that we're not going to retire your sign-off altogether. We're just going to mix it up.
Oh, okay.
So stick around for that, folks, at the end. And I'm also going to get on the party. I've got a bit of something to add as well.
We've been talking about the next 100 episodes being a bit, changing it up a bit.
Exactly.
That's me sort of running the,
I know, the old DJ days.
Yeah.
The drugs are certainly kicking in. And we're also going to add a couple of things as well, Ben. We're going to do a mindset, because we feel that, to build a portfolio, right mentor, right property, right strategy, we've got to have the right mindset. Yep. So we probably haven't covered that as much. So I'm going to kick that off today as well. So
beautiful.
A bit to get on with. So, mate, today's mindset theme is around foundations. And given that we're now in early February, the car parks at the gym are no longer as full in February as they were in January, where everyone has their New Year's resolutions that slightly fade.
Yeah, agreed. Totally.
So success really comes from having your foundations right. So for me today, with New Year's Eve being in the shadows of time right now, but if you think back to then when everyone was around the world looking to do a selfie with Sydney Harbour Bridge, the Statue of Liberty, the Eiffel Tower, you think of any iconic structure bridge, people were doing that.
Of course they did.
The interesting thing about that is no one actually does it when it's being built. When it's just land, when it's coming out of the ground, no one's running around on New Year's Eve taking photos with these half-built structures. But the foundations, whilst they're not glamorous, they're absolutely essential. And we see that all the time. When you think about 70% of all lotto winners end up going bankrupt afterwards because they don't have their foundations right in money. So today I thought it was a really good opportunity for us to kick the year off with our 101st episode and build on some of those foundations, because I think they're essential. And
totally essential.
And I think that anyone can build a better tomorrow if they get the foundations right. So
Well, it's the catalyst for what we do while we do. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, if we can change everyone's way in which they look after their money, then there's going to be a little bit more money in the jar. And if we can continue to keep doing that and building on that foundation and building that knowledge base up, then there'll be a lot more than a little bit in the jar. And coming back to your, analogy of, say, the Sydney Harbour Bridge, the Sydney Harbour Bridge wasn't practical until the two ends were joined together, were they? So it couldn't serve its purpose until the time that it was finally built. Then cars could move across it and people could walk across it and the trains could go over it. So it became practical and highly valuable once it was complete. And I think if you can get your money management skills right and those types of things, then all of a sudden you won't see it overnight, but you'll see it changing your financial well-being over time.
absolutely, it's like the Burj Khalifa in is that Abu Dhabi or is that Dubai? Burj Khalifa, the tallest.
I reckon it's Dubai, but it could be Abu Dhabi.
And that's an engineering feat,
Massive.
right? But if you think about that, that's got piers that go down 50 metres. So one Olympic-sized swimming pool below the ground that you can't see. That's not glamorous.
Yeah.
Well, that's absolutely essential to get that end product done. So without the foresight of those engineers to drive those piers that far down,
Yep.
when one of those famous sandstorms comes in Dubai, that building's going to fall over.
Well, what's really critical about that, but they also factor in for sway. Like, when you get so high, your air movements are so much stronger than what they are. And we only need to see that when you're in a plane. Although you can't feel it, that's turbulence. That's air movement in the opposite direction. So when they build these things, they also factor in movement. And I suppose from a personal wealth planning point of view, there is going to be some movement. So I reckon why a lot of people don't actually put strong foundations down is because they're more concerned about the movement than what they are about actually, getting their foundations right. So I'm sort of saying, well, in the planning work that we do, we absolutely factor in the movements as much as we can. Then there's potentially going to be some examples where, there's some surprise movement, i.e. an earthquake or something along those lines. Yeah. But that's your buffer. Yeah. That's ultimately the cash reserve that you put in place for that earthquake. Everything else in terms of your movement and your tolerances, well, that's your 5% that you give around money management in terms of, if I stay within 5% of my target, as opposed to being a Nazi budgeter, you're still going to, again, have transformation when it comes to long-term wealth creation.
Mate, that is some gold there. The movements are not as important as the foundations. I've never thought about it because I do know that the buildings can sway up to 2-3 metres. Some of our engineers will probably clarify that for us. But they move significantly. But if they've got the foundations right, so I've never thought of that in terms of the paradigm of the investor.
Well, here's another interesting fact. Let's go to aircraft. So the first aircrafts were built of steel, right? And there was a lot of crashes of those aircraft, and a lot of people died because the steel wasn't built to give tolerances. So what would happen is they'd crack and then the wing would fall off and the plane would crash. I don't know about these newer aircrafts, but I remember a stat. My father worked in the airlines, but they're still around 747, sort of 400 series. So the big birds, the big jumbos, those wings can move 17 metres in either direction.
What?
Right? So they can move 17 metres in either direction before the plane or those wings would critically snap. So if you ever get a chance to sit on a wing and you've got a nice day and you see the wing just, floating or moving through the air as the plane's moving at, 300 kilometres an hour, they can move 17 metres either way on those big aircrafts when you've got those two big engines sitting under it. So incredible
stats. So there you go, folks. There's a few cool analogies for you. If you don't have your foundations right in money management, in property, in building the portfolio, you're going to focus on the movements. But if the foundations are right, let's see if we can just, you and I back and forth a bit to see if we can come up with some foundations.
Yeah, sure.
For our listeners. And the first one for me is you've got to have a mentor.
Yep.
And these days, the mentor can be virtual. And, clearly we have a hope that our audience sees our information as a mentoring process for them. They don't have to meet us.
No.
But they can use that. In fact, a guy stopped me at the Doncaster shops the other day and just
okay.
pulled straight up to me, got the kids in tow, said, I just wanted to touch base and say thanks very much for the podcast. And I encourage people to come up and say good day if they see us.
Absolutely.
Because it's a really nice feeling to know that you're helping these people. But we've got mentors too. And virtual ones as well.
Totally. I mean, you've heard us talk about other podcasts and books that we read and just in business, we have people that we rank and rate in terms of their wisdom around how they built their business and what the mistakes, the things that they've done and haven't done. And that's why people come to specialists. They come and meet with specialists because they're they're smart enough to realise that why would I go and make those mistakes when someone else has already been there, done that, and I can leverage from that knowledge. So you're absolutely right. So obviously we know Tim Ferriss. There's quite a lot of them. I know you're really passionate about this, so I want you to reel off.
Well, we listen to a lot ourselves, but we listen to Ross Greenwood for money because that allows us to be virtually mentored by a lot of other people. And John Simons, for example, is a very strategic mind when it comes to property and finance in this country. I can't get access to him. I'd love to have lunch with him, but I can't get access to him. But I can via that virtual mentoring process. For me, there's another guy out of America whose name is Michael Hyatt. Hyatt. I listen to him a lot.
What's his podcast called?
This is Your Life, I think it's called.
Yep.
He's about to change it up, but he's got a blog and he's getting lots of stuff out. And for him, it's about productivity and how to do life better. And his version of minimum effective dose, with Tim Ferriss.
His steroids.
Yeah. And of course, Tony Robbins, but I think he's been a classic for a long time. But people, because he's been around so long, you can forget about how much wisdom that he has, and he's got a podcast out as well, which has some really great content that we listen to as well. Can you think of any?
Well, I mean, for Tony, I like the direction that he's going in around his big, audacious goals is he's trying to create world happiness. So he knows that there's obviously different intrinsic things that we have built into us, and I know you're big on this stuff. But I love the goal. The goal is to sort of say, hey, happiness comes from within. And so if I can teach you about all the things that make you happy and also make you angry, but you can deal with the angry stuff and you don't have to go out, and I can tell you when you're being manipulated by governments of this world or when you're doing certain things. For me, that's a wonderful, aspirational, career-fulfilling way in which you do it. I mean, the reason why we do this podcast, and I've made it very clear from my point of view, people make dumb decisions with money. They make dumb decisions when it comes to buying property. So we're trying to help in our little way to allow people to avoid
reverse that trend.
Yeah. And because we've also picked up a lot of great tips and tricks and ideas along the way from these virtual mentors, we want to pass that on as well. Because what I'm finding is that there's so much great content out there now that it's very hard to find the right time. In fact, one of our listeners wrote into us and said to remind everyone about speeding up the podcast. So wrap ourselves up and then say play us at 2 and you get through as many as possible. But if you're not sure of how that works, you flick up the little sort of sound bar thing and you'll basically have 1 times. Half times,
on iTunes, it's all there. Bang, it's all there straight away.
Flick it up and speed it up because obviously all podcasts that I listen at 1.5 times because there's so much information I want to keep learning. So I think I'm a student of life. You're a student of life. We're still building out ideas. We're still, the property market's changing. There's going to be market interventions from government. Affordability issues and negative gearing. So we've got to continually keep, rethinking what we're doing in regards to finding the right asset for our clients and how we can help them manage some of those things that they can control, but also have some insights into the things that they're not necessarily in control of.
Yeah, no, all good stuff. Tony Robbins over the summer introduced, the gratitude attitude. So billionaires are unhappy and poor people are unhappy. So it's got nothing to do with the money.
Yep.
And him and Tim Ferriss grounded it to, you've just got to be thankful for what you've got. If you can never be thankful for what you've got, you're always going to be unhappy and disappointed. But it's really interesting because it's in Australia, you can say, I'm really grateful that I live in Australia. I'm really grateful that I don't live in a third world. But sometimes they're really hard to connect to, even though they're incredibly relevant and purposeful.
Totally.
So his tip was, when you're going through your gratitude process, and they recommend doing it daily, which I've been practicing, so I'll give some feedback on how that's going.
Good.
Tony Robbins goes, and when you're going through that, if you're writing it down, for me, I do it mentally, you have to think about within 50 metres of where you are, something that you're grateful for. So, for example, I'm grateful that Ibis is a genius at what she does for this podcast.
Correct.
Because we couldn't get it done without her.
Totally.
And equally, I'm grateful that I surround myself with smarter people than I am, i.e. you, to make this podcast a success.
Rubbish.
So that's an example of where I can just go within 50 metres of where I am. what am I grateful for, despite the fact that I won the ovarian lottery to be born in Australia, all that sort of stuff.
Totally.
So these guys can offer you amazing insights as to how you can live a better life, but you don't have to meet them one-on-one. They can virtually mentor you.
Yeah, look, a Harvard Business School, TED Talks, there are some incredible people doing some incredible socially responsible things. There was some data that came out of Harvard, coming back to your point about money and happiness. So it's $70,000. So they worked out that basically if you could earn around $70,000, anything more than that was basically not going to increase your level of happiness. But if you're under that, then you're obviously going to struggle when it comes to your mental health around paying the bills and just getting through life. So it's nice to know that there's a bottom line. There's an absolute, where they have, basically research people's levels of happiness, from a theoretical point of view, and they've come up with this number. So interesting stuff.
Yeah, no, it's really good stuff. So to be able to anchor that, I mean, have you seen the movie Lion? You probably wouldn't have been
Not yet.
in the hospital.
No, I know. It's just come out.
It is amazing. I haven't cried that much in a movie since E.T. went home. But the beginning of it, if that doesn't give you perspective on how lucky we are to live in Australia, I don't know what will.
Yeah.
But again, in the busyness of life, that can easily get lost on you.
Yep.
So just that simple grounding of 50 metres, I challenge that to any of our listeners to see if that works for them this week.
One of the greatest gifts my parents ever gave me was the ability to travel, and to travel to very great, wealthy parts of this world, but also into areas of Asia where there's incredible levels of poverty and so forth, and Africa for that matter. And so you do get you have no idea how, when that plane turns for Melbourne or whatever and you're coming in, just how fortunate we are here. If you haven't done that travelling to sort of see how tough it is for some people, not to have 3 meals a day, but just actually get a feed in their stomach within a period of 3 or 4 days. Just incredible.
Australia's isolation is our weakness and our strength, isn't
Correct.
it? The weakness in that we don't get the perspective.
Very good.
So there's a great foundation for this year, folks. You must have a mentor. We'd love for Ben and I to be a part of that for you, but we certainly encourage you to go out there and find. There's so many ways to get good mentors. There's no excuse.
Can I build on that just quickly on talking about the right team? So if we're talking about building mindsets and so forth, so we've got these virtual mentors, but there is definitely value in getting professional advice. And it doesn't always come in perfect packages, and it doesn't always come for free. So I think from that point of view, if you're going to focus in on building your right team, we've talked about it before. We've actually done a podcast on it where we talk about the right accountant, the right buyer's agent, the right property investment advisor, the right money manager. All those things are going to be really important as you build out your skill sets to continue to help you not make the mistakes that others have made before.
Mate, brilliant. So I would say that's another foundation, mate, in terms of building your tribes.
Good point.
In terms of, I guess, not only do you need to have professionals, you've got to have a professional team.
Totally.
But you've got to surround yourself in everyday life with your tribe of people who are going to lift you up, not bring you down.
Agreed.
And I think that's really important. So for me, that's another one. So
talk to that a little bit more, Bryce, because I think there's some really good stuff in there. There's people who may have grown up in less than ideal circumstances. Alcohol could be a part of their household. Drugs could be part of their household. And we do know that, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree to break that cycle. And there'll be people who, younger people, young adults, young girls and boys who are going to have to make the decisions as teenagers about the road that they travel. I mean, in my particular case, my light bulb moment was year 7 when I was at a technical school, and I didn't want to be at a technical school. I didn't want to work with my hands. I was quite interested in, numbers and economics and that kind of thing at that time. So I asked my parents to move me out of that school because I was also hanging around with a group of lads who were living for today and getting themselves into a bit of trouble with the police. So from that point of view, it's really interesting. So if you can, they're going to try and draw you back in. They're going to try. So just, find those people who you admire and who are getting on with changing their lives for the better, and surround yourselves with those people, because those other people will again try and pull you back. To be the best that you can be, there will be people along the way who will say, I want to get off this bus. It's all too hard for me, and you should come with me. You should come with me, and I think that's wrong.
Yeah, mate, and often, let's be honest, there'll be a few listeners that relate to this. Often that tribe means going outside of the family unit because there's a whole bunch of normals that your hierarchy, your family tree has experienced, and they are so powerful and very difficult to undo that sometimes you're not going to get it from within. You don't ostracize from your family, but
definitely not. But
you, quite often, you can't be a prophet in your own village, and quite often if you go home to mum and dad, sister, brother, cousin, auntie, and you tell them about what you're doing, they're not going to listen. So, I mean, even Jesus had to go and get prophecy outside of his own village because they weren't listening to him there. So, it's important that we bring on as many people as we can outside of the family unit if that family unit is not lifting you up.
And you will know in your deepest of hearts when that is the case. My mum is always conservative around the risks that I take in life. Oh, you do need to do that. You need to spend that much money on a house, Ben. Now, it all comes from a genuine, position. But the reality is, she has no idea what she's talking about. And as mum, I love you to death. But the point I'm making there is, you've got to then, say, well, I'm not going to get the answers that I need in my tribe here. I'm going to have to broaden that tribe out to get better answers from the right people. And we've got Google that does take us into those environments, but there's also going to be crap in Google, immunisations, like unbelievable that we are getting, diagnoses of polio in the 21st. It just makes me mad that there's that type of thing where the scientists have come to their conclusion, and a couple of wackos who just want to basically have their moment in the sun, basically tell us that, no, it's dangerous for our kids. So, very frustrating.
So I guess the important thing there is, building your tribe is really, really important to have a foundation in this 2017. It's important that you surround yourself with the right people. So, can you think of anything else?
Yeah, I mean persistence. You're gonna take 2 steps back 2 steps forward, 1 step back potentially. So I would always say that Rome wasn't built in a day. You're gonna get some knockbacks. There's going to be some challenges. The best laid foundations still bring you back to solid, comfortable results. That's my I suppose my takeout and observation of doing this for over 20 years now is that you never fall back to square one unless you build it on sand.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like if you build it on good, solid foundations, you might, one corner might get a crack, but you can repair that or whatever it may be. So I think from that point of view, persistence is everything. I've had family friends who we lost a very close friend of ours a couple of years back, and that changed a lot of mindsets of a lot of those people to live for the now. And I just thought, yeah, okay, I can understand why you're grappling with a 37-year-old, very active, healthy person can unfortunately not be with us anymore. So now I'm going to sort of put all the big rocks in the jar right now. But that doesn't wash when you might have 20 or 30 years of economic hardship in retirement, and because you wanted to get some instances of self-gratification now. So I still think you've got to balance that out.
It's not always comfortable and convenient, is it? If it
point.
was, everyone would be doing it.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go on this journey, folks, building your tribe's important, because it's not going to be comfortable and convenient when you get negativity from someone who's trying to drag you down, or it's not easy and comfortable and convenient to listen to a podcast when everyone else is out, reading a fiction book on the train or whatever. If you realise that the persistence will pay off, that will be a foundation. That's the reason, one of the reasons that the building will be able to sway, because you'll have that foundation.
Mate, that is fantastic. I cannot stress that enough, that you're right. It's going to come with compromise. So comfortable and convenient. I think that's take that as a huge takeaway, listeners.
I would say that a foundation for this year, Ben, is to sweat the small stuff. And I know there's a book out there that says don't sweat the small stuff. And I think from a psychological point of view, that's absolutely true.
Correct.
But from a money management and property investing point of view, you absolutely should sweat the small stuff. The old saying of look after the pennies, the pounds take care of themselves. And to be able to do that foundation, Ben, we've made it really easy.
Yeah.
Money smarts. You just follow the money smarts, because then you can sweat the small stuff and it'll sort itself out. So if anyone doesn't have that, Ben, by the way, they can go to our homepage straight away and get a copy of it.
And that's that's not getting caught up in the minutiae of counting every cent. It's actually quite good. Over Christmas, New Year, I've done a lot of thinking around, obviously personal development and what that looks like. But I think there is absolutely beauty in detail. Like, there's, whether it be a shell on the beach, and you just look at that shell and you go, this is outrageous in terms of its level of detail in such a small thing. How did that come about? That sort of big understanding of those types of things. So for me, absolutely the beauty's in the detail. So for scientists, the beauty's in the detail. And I reckon the answers are in the detail. So when you start to think through that concept, I mean, why do we go to the level of detail that we go to around cash flow management and studying, cash flow movements for the next 40 years? I just feel that there is complexity in it. I mean, one of the biggest problem we're trying to solve right now is climate change, right? Is it real? Well, 90% of the scientists are telling us it is. So I'm not going to go against those experts, but they're obviously trying to solve something that's infinitely difficult to understand. But once they do understand it and their strength in proof becomes even stronger, then the naysayers will be even more embarrassed when it's proven that it is absolutely affecting the climate, and it's affecting the storms and the intensity of things that are happening on planet Earth come from that. So I love there's beauty in detail, but I also think the true answers are in that detail.
Yeah, beautiful stuff there, Ben. So sweating the small stuff is a foundation. So we've covered getting a mentor, we've covered building your tribe, we've covered being persistent. We talked about sweating the small stuff. Can you think of anything else?
Well, I just think, from my point of view, you've got to plant the seed. You've got to basically build something of size rather than just trying to do it ad hoc. So from that point of view, I'm a big believer that, the saying goes that apple tree is there today because 25 years ago someone planted a seed and nurtured it up to what it is today. So from that point of view, I absolutely love that. So I think, we call it being the farmer, not the hunter. Yeah. I think that makes sense to me.
Counter-seasonal. So a farmer thinks, I've got to plant this season to reap and sow in the next. Yeah. I'm also planting for next year and the year after, versus the hunter who wants a quick kill. And I think that our industry, the television industry, hasn't helped with that. Yeah. When you've got so many renovation shows and get-rich-quick schemes and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of fueled the hunter mentality. But if you think about some of the cultures, we've talked about this before, Vietnamese culture, Chinese culture, Italian and Greek culture, they're just long-term accumulators. They don't get caught up in the headlines. They are buying a property, and if the newspaper says, the building is swayed 2 metres, they don't get rid of the foundations and sell. They keep going. So I think that's a really important one, particularly this year, Ben, where I reckon there's going to be a lot of negative headlines around property, although there's some stuff around affordability we might get to next week. But if people are going to withstand some of the growth rates that we've seen in Sydney and Melbourne have been phenomenal. So if they don't see that, the headlines will be negative. But if you have that multi-seasonal approach to building a portfolio, you're doing this for 10 plus years, because you only have to look in the rear vision mirror last 10 years to see there was a GFC, an Asian crisis, a bird flu crisis, everything. Totally. So, but now we don't have that anxiety that we did back then because we stayed the long term. So for me, you've described it beautifully. Be a farmer, not a hunter.
Yeah, I love, expanding on that, these 15-second sound bites that we get on the news from the likes of the Shadow Treasurer about affordability and all those types of things. There is so much more to those stories than we get, news has gone from a 30-minute news to an hour news in most cases, but we're still only getting sound bites. So what I love about podcasts is that it's on demand. And so you will actually see just in the whole media environment over the course of the next 10 or 15 years, you are going to see amazing shows on tying a fishing fly. And there will be an audience for that, and it won't just be a 2-minute segment on a fishing show. There'll actually be a whole series of shows in tying floating flies and singing. I think that's brilliant, and I think more and more people are going to build greater education in their subject matter because of this ability that you can call these on-demand shows, such as ours, where they can get a more in-depth understanding of the material that they're studying.
Here. I think it's very well said. So Mate, there is that old saying, you remember, that wealth is the transfer of money from the impatient to the patient. There's probably wealth. Wealth.
That is gold.
But it could be now. Wealth is the transfer of money from the hunter to the farmer.
Yeah,
So-
totally. And you're going to be able to be a better farmer because of YouTube. You're going to be able to be a better farmer because of podcasts. You're going to be a better farmer to find these specialised shows that, hopefully don't have agendas to them, where they're just teaching you and passing on that knowledge. And I think that's wisdom.
Oh, I agree, mate. I agree. Now, I can think of another one, but it's definitely your cup of tea. You eat it up. So, mate, what do you reckon around strategy?
Yeah, look, strategy, of course. I mean, there's tactical and there's strategic that you normally would consider as part of anything that we approach. So, in a war sense, we talked about, you might win, might lose the fight, but you win the war. And there's great examples of that. What was that that movie where they found the counter and they solved, they got the Germans password for all of their correspondence.
Right.
I'm just trying to think of what it was. Anyway, the story goes that they obviously solve it and they realise that there's going to be a big invasion and people are going to basically die, and they could have stopped it, but someone had to make a really tough call to say we might lose that battle, but it gives us enough time to prep and basically counter and win the war. So I think from that point of view, and I'm sure our listeners are sitting in their cars or listening on the radio basically saying...
Benedict Cumberbatch?
Yeah, he was the actor in
Yeah.
it. He won the Academy Award for that particular thing. I'm trying to think of what it was called.
That was an Ivor's contribution. It was another silent.
So someone out there, and someone's yelling out, "It's called the something." I'm like, yeah, I know it is. But I suppose that's the point. So, what I want to talk about is you've got to have a plan, and your plan has strategic and tactical components to it. But if you don't have those, then again, how do you build a house? You've got to have a good set of plans. If you don't, you'll still build a house. But what's it going to be built like? And how many reworks are you going to do? And how long is it going to last? And all of those types of things. So for me, obviously, I'm absolutely passionate about this. We've built a business around planning, become what you plan to become. So,
yeah, look, it's a yacht without a rudder just drifts wherever the wind blows. So, and the thing is that no one actually drifts to a destination they would have chosen. And that's essentially what we're finding now, that people are drifting. They're getting to the later start of their life cycle and they're going, this is actually not the destination I would have chosen. And so it's getting too late. So brilliant foundation there, Ben, in terms of strategy. So there you go, folks. There's 6 that we've come up with. So maybe you can let us know if we've missed any. But get yourself a mentor, build your tribe, be persistent, sweat the small stuff. Be a farmer, not a hunter, and make sure that you absolutely get a plan or develop a strategy.
And I can round that out also by just sort of saying that with the right attitude, and you will get confidence from your mentors, you'll get confidence from persistence, you'll get confidence from speaking to the right people in your tribe, you will understand that the answers are in the detail, and if you can't work those answers out, you go to the right people to get those answers. You think longer term and you have a strategy around that. If you can bring that all into a way of life and an attitude, then, mate, you're halfway home.
I agree. And another point on that, I was talking to someone recently, and they said to me, Bryce, I am very good at money management. I know where all of my money goes. Why do I actually need a plan? And I said, okay, well, and they had a healthy borrowing capacity, right, of up to, they could borrow over $1 million. So I said to them, that's fine. If you don't feel like you need a plan, that's fine. But answer me this question. Of that borrowing capacity, what should your next move be? How much of it should you spend? And what growth rate do you need? And what yield rate do you need to get your goals? And not only that, once you've made that purchase, when should you actually buy the one after it? Should it be straight away? Should you wait 3 years? Because as you always say, Ben, cash flows tell the story. So if they already know their cash flows, they should already know the story. So when should you buy that next one and the subsequent one after that? And the silence said everything. And so we know from experience, Ben, that there's listeners here, they're engineers, they're accountants, they're people who are unbelievably good with numbers, unbelievably good with strategies, unbelievably good at working at their money. But it's that confidence of knowing what the next step is the fundamental thing that often undoes them. And I mean, even in our plan, we've got a software engineer that's taken him 7 years to build ours with the Property Investment Advisor of the Year. And to get to the point where we are with our planning, that's two very intelligent brains getting it over a 7-year period. So it's not an insult to anyone who's good with numbers. It's not easy to do.
No. Come back to the Sydney Bridge analogy. Do you reckon they started at both ends in North Sydney and Sydney and went, well, if we just aim for the middle, we should be able to get the bolts roughly in the right position?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had a tolerance of less than, I think it was half a foot between that. Now, if they got that, okay, everyone, undo all the bolts. We need to start again.
That bloke who's already started the painting, get him to stop.
Stop. We're out by 4 degrees. We need to. Oh, now we know. God, you don't do it. So I think the reason why you do planning is to get the best optimization. I think is the word that's just come to mind as you were talking about. Then is you could still roughly buy what you think you can afford, but is it the most optimal use of your money? And is it the most optimal way in which you can get to your end destination? And I think, if that's how we round it out, I think that's a good point.
I love it, mate. I love it. If anyone, if this is resonating with anyone, they can. We will put a video up, Ivis, of
you've got a video. You shot a video, mate.
Yeah, we'll shoot a video on this stuff because it's really important this time of the year. Yep. All the New Year's resolutions are fading, so we need to help people get their foundations set. Right.
Brilliant.
Couple of things, Ben. You might have a couple of things that you want to add, but we are going to be at the Melbourne Homeboy show.
We are.
February 24th to 26th.
Spreading the love.
Spreading the love. We'll come back to you next week with some times and when we're on, Ben, but we'd love all of our couch listeners who are in Melbourne to come and say g'day. We love it. We love talking to them.
Totally.
We love talking to our listeners. So
we'll even sign the book that you buy.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have a property couch booth at the expo. So, and Ivis has given me sign language for something, which maybe you can interpret, Ben.
She might have to write it down for us, mate.
Code is, we know she's not going to speak.
And you know what? She's sitting on one of my 5-year-old's chairs.
Yeah.
So it looks like she's in kindergarten.
Oh, yeah. So she's
stand
19. That's very efficient of you, Ivis.
We're a quality outfit, mate. We're highly organised.
I know. And then, of course, join the conversation at the Property Couch on Insta, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. But also at Bryce Holdaway for me on the same, and at Ben Kingsley for you on the same, because you even tweet emoticons sometimes.
I've tweeted a few interesting.
I've noticed.
Well, now
you're very active on Twitter. You're just not active on Insta or.
I lie on my back all day of late, so I've just been reading a lot. So there was some interesting, newsletters and letters that have gone out from very powerful corporations and so forth that I think have got some real, some. If I see any value in it, I'll pass it on.
Look at you. So there you go, folks. At Ben Kingsley, if you want to see what Ben actually gets up to here.
Ben Kingsley AU, isn't it?
AU. Oh, I better make a note of that. AU. So we'll
Because otherwise you'll get Sir Ben Kingsley. You'll get the real Ben Kingsley.
Oh, yeah.
Sir Ben Kingsley.
Good. Okay, Ben Kingsley AU. And some for those listeners who've been with us for the journey, 100 episodes. So those are new, that's fine. But those that have been with us for the journey, if they've enjoyed what we've been doing, Ben, and they're on the train or whatever now, if they wouldn't mind just flicking over to iTunes and rating us, that just helps. I know we've said it many times, but it does help.
So someone was telling me about that the other day as well, one of our listeners. And when you subscribe and it's in your favourites and you click on it, you can't actually do a review there. So you've got to go back into the top charts area. You've got to type our name in or find us in the top 10 in business. And then you can write your review there. So a lot of people are sort of saying, where do I write the review? Because I would love to chase down Tim Ferris.
Yeah, chase for Tim.
Chase for Tim.
Hashtag chase for Tim.
Yeah. So
we're doing okay. I
think he's
so we need 10 more. So if 10 of you can help us.
He's at 280. I think we're at 250.
All right, well, there you go.
Well, again, lying down on my back. I had a look at it this morning.
Yeah, you obviously know. So, and if you're on Android, I don't know how to do it. I've got to be honest. So maybe someone can let us know, and we'll do that on Facebook.
I don't think you can do it on Android.
And on the Property Couch website, Ben, you can also leave a review there. So that'd be great. Now, mate, we didn't want to lose your sign off. So
just different. Change it up.
Change it up. So we're going to turn it into the Did You Know segment, where interesting facts from Ben. So I believe you've got some stuff.
I have. So I thought we'll start off with in the Did You Know interesting facts. I'm going to do the best of 2016 from our good friends at CoreLogic. We've got some data on some of the best performing suburbs. Now the data is only up till the end of September, so these may have changed. But here's some interesting stats for you. So The highest median value property for houses is Point Piper in Sydney, with a lazy median of 6.629180. Now, if I'm buying at that price point, am I going to actually round down?
Fourth decimal.
Like, am I going to go down to $80? Like, seriously, I'll offer you 6.65 mil, and I think I'll round it at that. But no, to get a median of that figure is quite interesting.
Mate, that's got Aussie Stadium there too, hasn't it? Aussie John.
Oh, he might be there. He might be there.
50 mil, his is.
So now units, our highest median is Dawes Point in New South Wales as well, and that's 3,091,000 digits.
Just for clarity, you've probably already said this. This is for the best of 2016, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the best of 2016. Now, here's the lowest property prices around the country.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, so Mullewa in central Western Australia, you can buy a house for $73,530. Who's thought?
There we go. We don't have an affordability issue.
Affordability, my
you can do that on your credit card.
Yeah, exactly. For units, Deagon in Brisbane. So Deagon has unit values of $123,000 for the median. So there's the highest and lowest. And then now the greatest change in the last 12 months.
Has to be Sydney, surely.
Greatest change? No. For houses, it was Windsor in Melbourne.
Oh, subsection of Paran.
47% growth in the 12 months to September 2016.
Wow.
In
shout out to the Windsor listeners. Mate, they're loaded. Lunch is on them.
I mean, that would have been nice if it had been downtown Windsor in London, but that's still not bad. Not bad going in our little Windsor area of Melbourne. And in terms of units, it's Hunters Hill with a 45.8% growth in median house prices. That doesn't mean that everyone's house or unit has moved up by that much.
It does.
I'm sure there'll be people ringing me up tomorrow saying, my property hasn't moved up by that much. Anyway, so that's the last 12 months.
On saying that, on my Instagram, I often send a picture of a really great spot in, I don't know, call it South Australia or Victoria.
Yeah.
Beautiful property. And then I say, by the way, the median price, because I didn't want to get boring and say median price. So I said, by the way, if you want to live in this suburb, it'll set you back however the median price is.
Yeah.
And people tweet, they come back to me, they go, I can buy that for that. No.
No, you can buy the one down the road.
Yeah.
That's
in
half
the corner
the
of the
size
shade.
of this, and half the land size as well.
Yeah.
And then the 5-year change for median house prices. No surprises here with Sydney's growth over the last sort of 30 months. Homebush. With a 147% increase in median values. And for units, it was Lilyfield in Sydney as well for units of 134% growth in the last 5 years. So there you go.
Shout out to those folks.
I've got more data. There's been more of that coming out over the course of the next 100 episodes.
So shout out to the listeners. Ben's new sign-off segment is Did You Know? Interesting property fact, and he'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
So if you've got an interesting property fact that you want to share with him, that we want to share with the listeners, let us know. We want to know. And I'm going to sign off with a life hack, Ben.
I'll do that.
Go.
No, I was going to
You get
go.
distracted? You're
No.
not interested in my life hack?
Well, try me. This is new.
So,
I thought that's it. It was a wrap. But now you're going to close out the show. This is fantastic.
Well, no, we'll throw it back over to you. But
for what?
Well, that's what you're going to think of.
No, I was reaching.
You're going to do Buzz Lightyear.
I was actually reaching for Buzz Lightyear.
But I'm going to do a life hack. So I've been addicted to. I'm addicted to distraction.
You are.
You know that.
Yes.
So on the iPhone.
And I'm a total distraction.
True. You can actually turn your whole phone black and white. So it's kind of grayscale, and people think, why would you do that? Well, I did it for 6 weeks to try and break the addiction of just forever going on it, so that it actually is quite boring. So if you go into your settings, you go general, you go accessibility,
right,
and then you go to display accommodations, you go to this colour filters section here, you can just drag that straight across, and look, the whole thing goes boring black and white.
Well, there's only one thing that's not boring that's black and white.
Well, there was a couple of punchlines I was going to go, but we won't go there. So now, wouldn't you agree, Ivis? It's not great for podcasts.
I'm already. I want you to throw it away.
It actually is really boring to look at. So if anyone out there is addicted to their phone and they want to break the habit,
and they want to get more productive,
that's the point.
I'll
get some productivity life hacks coming up. Don't worry about that. They'll be good ones.
Yeah.
That's what I suggest that you do. Go and make it black and white. You heckled me about 6 weeks later when I put it back to colour and you said it didn't last. It was just to retrain. But if you're having some challenges, that's something that
I like that.
You can do. So,
that's very good.
And if anyone else has got a life hack they want to share with the listeners, let us know. So, mate, I feel lost because at this point in time, I'm like, I'm over to you.
You shouldn't have. I think that should have just been a wrap.
Over to you for a sign off, but we're not going to do that. So, mate, I think.
Thanks to Jack and Harry for letting us use their toy room.
Agreed.
Oh, let's.
Does it ever say infinity and beyond?
I don't know.
We didn't get the timing right. Until next week, folks.
Harbour mode. Engage.
No, Ben can't get it right. So,
I'm just trying.
but whilst you're getting lost in your children's toys, we're probably going to talk about the affordability issues next week. I reckon
Sounds good.
It's trending, Ben. You know what trending is?
Enemies closing in.
It's trending.
Just like I'm not.
It's trending.
Who said easily distracted?
There you go, folks.
I'm easily distracted.
Maybe Ben needs to do my life hack because he gets easily distracted. But until next week when we talk about housing affordability, have a great week.